Right, but
That's
there's
what it's
also, I
for.
mean, there's more to this conversation than that as well. Like, I was
100%.
sitting in chat for a bit and we're using words like cultivar, and that's just not like, Colombian is not a cultivar. Colombian is a variety, right? And so it's important to understand the difference in the meaning of these terms so that you can understand like what you're talking about. Like for example, haze doesn't have one smell. Haze is a polyhybrid of multiple varieties, right?
Yeah.
So within even the most original line that we have right now, there's a ton of genetic variation built into that line, right? So like that's why it's really important to understand the definitions of words like land races and variety and cultivar, because it gives you the context from which to understand how the population is going to behave. Which is why I go on and on and on about it, right? Like I landed on the importance of these terms because saying strain and then giving something a name doesn't inform the buyer of the seeds, right? And if we're breeders and we're trying to like be honest and have integrity about the populations that we're selling to the public, they should have some context to understand what they're buying, right? And if we say things like, "Oh, it's gelato crossed whatever strain," it
Right.
implies that everything is the same, and they're just not, right?
Well, what if what if they think
Anybody that's
strain is
grown
cultivar and
anybody
cultivar is
anybody
strain?
that's anybody that's grown
Well, you're
population
bringing up the truth, my man.
like
Right? Like,
anybody that's growing populations of seeds, like if you're growing more than 5, 10 seeds at a time,
yep.
that's when you actually see the variation, right? If you're growing like a 5 pack of seeds or a 3 pack of seeds like they sell in Europe, your sample size is just not large enough to see the variation that exists within the family, right? So it's only
I
when you're
agree.
growing at sizable scale that you actually start to understand that, oh my God, there's differences in what these words mean. Right. And
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
like, I know it sounds pedantic to some people when I keep harping on and on and on about these things, but it's like, it's actually important to understand what those words mean because there's minutia between the definitions, and that minutia really informs what people can expect. So,
Right. No, it's well said, man. And that's the truth too. Yeah, it's so Ryan, do you often find you know, I've thought about this a lot. Like we've really undefined the world that we occupy right now in terms of plant science, and we have definitive terms, but they get mixed up. What would be the
yeah,
best way to clean that
yeah,
up
because
in your eyes?
in a lot of contexts it actually doesn't matter, right? Like if you're saying variety or cultivar and you're a consumer of cannabis that's buying dope from the dispensary, the words actually mean
Sure.
the same thing, right? It's just that to someone that's actually selling genetics or someone that's buying genetics, it's
Right.
like you really want to understand the difference between variety and cultivar because it means like a cultivar, for example, represents a type. So it's like it's got a fingerprint,
Yeah.
but when
Well,
you breed it to itself,
hey
that
Ryan,
fingerprint goes away,
let's
right?
let's
But
let's
let
go
me just
let's go let's
let me
let's
just
go
finish this.
through them really quick. So a land race is exactly a variety from a specific geographic area, correct?
It's more than that. That's one way to think about it. That's really only
Okay.
one level of the conversation. A land race is a variety that is grown in an environment by a culture for a cultural purpose. Okay. And that's really the definition. So you can look at things like,
I agree,
you
yeah.
know, Pakistani hashish varieties or Afghani hashish varieties. Or another one that I like to give an example is the Thai stick, right? The population is grown for Thai sticks because it's a unique phenotype that has been selected for generations and generations for a specific purpose by the people of that culture that are using it for a purpose, right? So you can
And
think of hash varieties, in Afghanistan and
then
Pakistan and
what is a
India
variety?
are
What
land
is a
races.
variety by definition then?
A variety is a type, right? So yeah, a type just means like you can call it like a phenotype, really, that is reproducible by seed And when you do reproduce it by seed, that type reappears. So
It's true to type.
typically, like you could talk about like a purple variety or an auto flowering variety or a CBD variety, right?
But
Because
also a land race or a variety of origin.
Yeah, that would be a
yeah,
variety.
they can be varieties, but they can also, yeah, it depends on how far down you want to get into that's why I use loose terms like, like purple or CBD or auto flowering. Right? Like when
Well,
we say
okay,
auto
so
flowering,
let's move
you
on to
let,
let's
let me
move on to
finish.
strain.
What?
Okay, go.
I'm so excited. When you say auto flowering variety, like, people
I
name it
love this combo. It's awesome.
people name it like, my ice cream auto flowering, right? Call it ice cream or gelato auto flowering or whatever. When you grow out the seeds, yeah, they all auto flower, but that's the only thing about them that is consistent and stable, right? Like the scent is all over the place, the height is all over the place, the potency is all over the place, right? So the only thing for which it really is defined is auto flowering, right? And so you can differentiate between like CBD varieties or THC varieties. Um, because when you reproduce those things, the only thing that stays constant is that it's a THC dominant variety or a CBD dominant variety. All the other traits are all over the place, right? So that's how horticulturally we use the word variety. If you move into registered variety, the plants have to be distinct, uniform, and stable for some set of traits, but those traits have to be reliably reproduced generation after generation after generation. Right. So like terpinolene variety being so dominant is actually would be one that might qualify as a variety.
Sure.
Okay. Because it's such again, it's like it has to do with like
Traits.
how often does that type reproduce in the population? Okay.
Mm.
A cultivar is different in that a cultivar does does represent a unique described type. Like we'll go to white warren white thorn rose because Caleb's here and he knows a lot about this one. That one is a cultivar because it's a unique genetic combination that when you try to breed it by seed, it falls apart, right? Like the type doesn't come back. Okay, so that's a cultivar. Another one that's a good example of a cultivar is like a type 2 seed population, right? So like a mixed CBD THC plant that's a hybrid of a THC plant and a CBD plant. That chemical type that represents the type disappears after an F1 after the initial breeding, because it's controlled by a heterozygous, like it's a heterozygous state at that locus in the genome. So when you reproduce it, you get segregation at that locus, and the type falls into 25% THC, 50% CBD, or 25% CBD, right? And so you can never have like a type 2 variety, right? So a type 2 seed line it would be a hybrid population of seed, but it would be a cultivar, right? So a cultivar is not just a, it's not just a clone. It's just that most often cultivars are clones, right? You can have a cultivar that is a seed population, but it's not a seed line that you can keep growing from seed every year. So
Right. It's a specific combination of two plants.
yeah, so when we talk about cultivars, you have like again, let's use the white thorn rose example. What is the what's the chemical in it again, Caleb? It's selenodiene dominant, right? So if we describe that cultivar, you always have to define the traits that make up the cultivar, right? Like that when you get a cultivar registered, it has to be registered for a set of traits that define what that cultivar is, which is why the fingerprint that Mark is talking about is actually so important. Okay. So if we can create, like, if you register a variety or a cultivar, sorry, by that selenidiene dominant profile, or the selenium, yeah, the selenium terpene dominant profile, and then somebody shows up with another plant that is like, it's not even genetically related, but it has that same terpene profile, those two plants are part of the same cultivar group. Okay, it's not necessarily a separate cultivar unless there's like other morphological traits that separate those two types, right? So it's just that in cannabis, it's more common than not that the unique plants that we do come across are single plants, like whitethorn rose or uh some of these other,
Oh,
the dragonfly earth medicine, Josh and Kelly were talking about this plant when I was staying with them, and they had a valencine dominant plant. Well, that's an incredibly rare terpene profile, right? To have a valencine dominant plant. So that plant would have been a putative cultivar, right? You could register that as a cultivar based on that unique chemistry of the plant, right? So when we're buying seeds or selling seeds, we're not really selling cultivars. Um,
right. It's a hybrid of a cultivar.
yeah, which is nothing, right? That doesn't merit a
Right. I
name.
was just saying that's, it's a
Yeah.
clone.
Yeah, the clone that is selected, and if you grow in a population of seeds, like even if you buy a hybrid of a cultivar, you might find something unique in that family of seeds that is a cultivar, right? But it's like the process of it becoming a cultivar is what Mark was saying earlier, which is taking that plant to the lab, getting a fingerprint for it, like a chemical fingerprint, and seeing if there's something unique and special about it, right? And that act of having it chemically analyzed and describing the unique phenotype of the plant, that is what makes it a cultivar, right? If it's
Bingo.
unique, if the traits are unique.